I challenge anybody right now, even on this podcast you're listening, take time in the morning, in the evening, whenever, look at yourself in the mirror and spend time 10, maybe even 15 seconds to say, do you like what you see?
It's the spirit in mind. It's the spirit in mind. Keep the spirit in mind.
Welcome to the Spirit in Mind broadcast with your hosts, Bishop C. Guy Robinson and Dr. Jonathan Shepard, where we explore faith and mental health perspectives on current affairs. Let's get into today's discussion with the Spirit in Mind.
So that's why it's so important to have this, as we're talking about drawing closer to God, to have this sense of connection with God that makes it clear that I am who God says I am. And so that we can hold on to that when it is being questioned or challenged by people who, for whom our identity is their inconvenience.
Wow. And isn't it something that we see that even today?
Yeah.
You know, we look in our world today where people's authentic identity is being challenged, where people are being told that they're no longer welcomed here, not because of their behaviors. Yes, some of them because of their behaviors, but we have many who have now been told they're no longer welcome here because of who they truly are, the color of their skin, their speech, the way in which they look. That's horrible. It really is horrible, deplorable.
Yes.
You know, from where I sit, where we literally have ICE agents who are stationed at various ports of entry, just looking, not even asking you anything, but literally just saying, you don't look right.
Right.
And I can only imagine what that's doing for a person's psyche
Right.
at that time. That's what I felt that as you were saying that. So, Bishop, thank you for putting that to a word: the rejection of authentic identity.
Yeah,
Not
because
necessarily-
we can't change, at least not and be at peace, because our identity is from our perspective, from spirit of mind, God given. I am who God says I am, and there are things that can't change and shouldn't want to change. Whether that is that we are African American, Hispanic, or whatever those things are. They're God given, and so. And people, it's human nature to have that proclivity of not only who we are, but who we are becoming as we are maturing, as we are developing. And each stage of our development has people who meet us at those stages. And quite frankly, it becomes sometimes convenient for them to leave us where they met us. Let's stay with Jesus. You know what I mean? There's no problem with them. I believe that's Luke chapter 4. There's no problem with them because at first they are, if you go with that text, impressed by the eloquence of his speech. They enjoy the speaking, but they enjoy him as Joseph's son, the carpenter. So they embrace the carpenter with son with the eloquent speech. But the idea of being the liberator who has come to set the captives free and fulfill the scriptures of Isaiah, because he said, this day, the scriptures fulfilled in your hearing. And so that idea of doing that is what is rejected. And so to them, who he is becoming, if you will, in terms of his human development, is an inconvenience to who they would prefer him to remain to be. Because sometimes development costs us certain relationships.
Wow. Whew. That's powerful, Bishop. And so as we're thinking about and we're challenging you as you're listening to this about your identity and again that refers to even part of the anchoring your identity and how it should be drawing you closer to God. There is an analogy that I in meditation have been thinking about. When you think about who you're becoming, Many times when you're in therapy, when you're in treatment, they will tell you take time to look at yourself in the mirror. They'll challenge you to look at yourself in the mirror to be able to say, do you like what you see or who you see?
Absolutely.
And I challenge anybody right now, even on this podcast you're listening, take time in the morning, in the evening, whenever, look at yourself in the mirror and spend time 10, maybe even 15 seconds to say, do you like what you see? Now, I am not just referring to your physical appearance because we look in the mirror for our physical appearance, but I'm talking about taking that look in the mirror to look to see, do you like the behaviors that you have been exhibiting? Do you like what you have become? And it's interesting, Bishop, that as you were saying regarding our authentic identity, some of us have taken on identities that we were never supposed to have
Absolutely. Yes.
because of some of the things that have happened in our lives. Now, I'm not saying that those things that happen in our lives should were intentional. Some of them may have been intentional. Some of them may not have been intentional. I just don't know. Um, but there are some things that I know people hold on to describe who they are because of the different things that have occurred in their lives, because of the various things that they have experienced, the traumas, um,
Absolutely.
the hurt, the rejection that they have experienced. And when they look in the mirror, Bishop, that's where I'm at. They see all of that, and it's interesting that when you look in the mirror, you can see yourself. You can see yourself. If I describe myself, I don't have any hair, Lord Jesus. I don't lost my hair. But at least I can laugh about it. I wear glasses. On today's podcast, I have my University of Chicago sweatshirt on. This is where I went for undergrad. So this is what I see when I look in the mirror. But I guarantee you, there will be sometimes I look in a mirror and I can see a person that may not be happy with where he is right now in life.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. This becomes a critical question in our becoming. So just for clarity, I'm talking about us becoming. And so that question is, do I like who I am or what I'm seeing? And that also becomes a prayer. God,
Mm,
am I becoming what you purposed me to become? Am I on track with regards to my purpose? And that's important because, as you just said, Dr. Shepard, sometimes traumatic experiences can lead to the creation of a false self.
yes.
Fawning is a trauma response, which means sometimes the person and the persona that I assume to get through this adverse childhood experience or whatever I went through, excuse me, is a person that I needed to be. Um, so now that I'm out of that, um, how do I integrate that into myself, into my experience, so that I can become more of what God intended or purposed me to become? That's the reason He let me survive it. He helped get me through it. Now, how do I incorporate this into my larger purpose? Like Joseph said, he said, listen, the trauma of the pit, trauma of the prison, that all was traumatic. Maybe was even meant for evil, but I'm integrating this into my whole being because I believe there was a God who was with me. In fact, that's what the theme of Joseph is like. He's in the pit, but the Lord was with him. He went into Egypt, but the Lord was with him. He went into prison, but the Lord was with him. And so it's integrating that into my story, not to avoid it, but how do I integrate it into to say this was a part of it? I accept that it happened, but it's not going to infect the development of who I'm called to be. I'm going to incorporate it into my story. And to be able to do that means we have to have those constant conversations with God too. Is this, do I like what I see? And then, if you will, God, are you
Mm,
pleased with who I am becoming? Am I following your will? And that's an important prayer. And I'll stop with this because let's go back to the Jesus model again. Luke 2:52 says, and Jesus increased. If you have another translation, it says, and Jesus grew, which speaks to the unique insight that we get into the developmental process of the humanity, if you will, of Christ. So, and Jesus grew in wisdom, stature, favor with God and with man.
Mm.
I want to suggest, I want to play that against him being despised and rejected of men.
Mm.
Yeah, he's despised. There were seasons when he was growing in favor with people, but
Mm.
there was also inevitably a season of his becoming when he was despised and rejected by people. But the consistent constant is the favor with God.
Mm.
And what allows him to be consistent in the seasons of being favored by people and being rejected by people is the consistency of his alignment with the favor of God, which gave
Wow.
him a consistency of identity that whether this is the season in which I'm being despised and rejected or loved and favored by people, this consistent sense of who I am in God allows me to endure whatever season people have.
Mm. Wow.
That's very important to have that
Ve-
divine connection.
Very important. Wow. Thank you, Bishop. Because what we see, and what we see even in treatment, is that people struggle with the various seasons that they go through because they are not sure of who they are.
Right,
And I've even heard where people will tell me, Dr. Shepherd, I'm a different person in this season.
right, right,
It,
right.
it is so funny. So thank you, Bishop, because the revelation in there is heavy. Because I will hear, and again, I have no problem with saying it for myself, where a season can almost make your identity. Whereas what we just presented to you is that there should be consistency there that will allow you to be able to survive whatever season you find yourself in. The season of
Absolutely,
favor.
because if people change and you built your identity off of popularity polls, I'm not anti
Mm.
relationships are very important. Now, please hear me on that. I'm not suggesting to cut everybody off and all that. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
I'm saying, but relationships evolve and develop. And if our identity is completely immersed in popularity, first of all, as a teacher and instructor of critical thinking, that's a fallacy of reasoning. It's called the popularity ad populum fallacy. That just because everybody is approving of something doesn't mean that it's right.
Yeah.
But if I build my whole identity off of the season of popularity, when the inevitable season of just mediocrity or disapproval comes, I'll lose who I am.
Wow.
So I don't know who I am when it's
Mhm.
unpopular to be me,
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
I built my whole identity off of that. That's why it's important to have a sense of who we are that transcends popular opinion.
And Bishop, this is just so relevant to what we see in practice. We see this in practice when I'm working with right now. I'm thinking of college age students who they've done well in high school, elementary school, middle school, and they are able to get into a certain school of stature, whether it be Ivy League school or whatever school of higher education of learning, maybe even Morgan State, and they get there, they're used to surviving all A's, and they get Bishop Robinson, Dr. Robinson as their professor. And he had to let them know you were there, but but now you in a much bigger pond. And it's amazing, Bishop. It will shatter their identity. I know what it was like. Again, it's so apropos that I'm wearing my University of Chicago sweatshirt where I went for undergrad, one of the higher institutions of our country. And when I got there, I thought I mean, I I just knew I was ready, Bishop. I was getting A's. I was, if I get B's, I was ready for biology. I was ready for organic chemistry. Come on, bring it on. And that thing shook me to my core because I had built my identity just on me getting good grades and not really taking the time to understand what the student Jonathan was built on at that time. Yes, part of who I am, intelligent young black male, but sometimes that's all that I was thinking about. But I'm more than just my academics. I'm more than just the study of what I am pursuing in my career. And Bishop, that's hard. That's a hard pill for people to swallow at times. I hope people are hearing this and catching this and getting the revelation in this, because when I finally understood that it was more than just good grades. Now we promote good grades here, but being able to understand the life lessons, the life journey, the challenges that were needed to be built up within me so that when I faced another challenge, when I faced another hardship, it wouldn't sink me, it wouldn't shatter me like this. And so you may even want to think about that particular experience of rejection that you've gone through. Think about what that thing has, what it should be building in you. And like I said, like we said for number 4, principle, it should be drawing you closer to God. It should be tightening your relationship with God. It should be helping you to understand who you are. Yeah, Bishop. Thank you. You helped me. Even as I was just thinking about this
Yeah,
and
that's
becoming the young man that I am. Yes, yes.
The spirit in mind.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. We're on Facebook at Spirit in Mind, and we're also on Instagram at Spirit in Mind Live. Join us next time for a new episode of Spirit in Mind.